In the world of boxing, few names carry the weight of legends like Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and Lennox Lewis. These are the names that are forever etched in history, revered not just for their triumphs in the ring but for the wars they waged, the unforgettable moments they created, and the rivalries that defined an era. But in the midst of all this reverence, there's a name that has risen, one that has earned the respect of the modern boxing world through sheer dominance, skill, and an indomitable will: Oleksandr Usyk. The Ukrainian boxer had already made waves in the sport when he stepped up from the cruiserweight division, where he had been an undisputed champion, to the heavyweight division, where giants roam. He didn't just take a step into new territory, he conquered it. Usyk's victory over Anthony Joshua was the beginning of a reign that solidified him as the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, a title he defended in 2024 when he beat Tyson Fury, a man often hailed as the best of his generation. This was no small feat. Fury, the undefeated Gypsy King, was seen by many as the pinnacle of the sport, and to defeat him not once, but twice, made Usyk the undeniable king of the division. For many, this was the moment that secured Usyk's place in the pantheon of all-time greats. How could he not be? He had done what only a select few had ever done: become the undisputed champion of the world in two weight classes, a feat that was once thought to be impossible. But despite this triumph, one voice in particular had a very different take on Usyk's legacy. It was the voice of Duke McKenzie, a former world champion himself, who took to the airwaves with a brutal, yet honest, assessment of the Ukrainians' place in boxing history. McKenzie, who had seen the greats of the past and stood in the ring with some of the finest fighters of his time, was candid in his view. While Usyk was certainly a great in the modern era, McKenzie was quick to dismiss the notion of him being an all-time great. In a conversation that would stir debate among fans and pundits alike, McKenzie shared his thoughts on Talksport.com. "Unfortunately for Oleksandr Usyk," he began, "he is not an all-time great. He is a modern great." McKenzie's words hit with the force of a punch. To him, Usyk's greatness, while undeniable in the context of today's boxing world, didn't quite measure up to the heavyweights of the past, men like Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, and Ernie Shavers. These fighters, McKenzie explained, weren't just great champions. They were part of a vibrant, competitive era where each of them could bounce off one another, testing their skills and legacies in a series of epic battles that would shape the very fabric of boxing history. Even in Mike Tyson's era, McKenzie continued, he had Riddick Bowe, Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield. You had exceptional champions then. Any of those guys I have just named, Usyk wouldn't have beaten them. And that is my honest opinion. It was a bold statement, one that left many wondering if McKenzie had a point. Could Usyk really have stood toe-to-toe with the giants of the past, those towering figures who had carved their names in the annals of boxing history with unforgettable performances? McKenzie didn't mince words when comparing Usyk to one of the sport's true legends, Lennox Lewis. As a former world champion, if I put myself in their shoes, how would I beat Oleksandr Usyk if I was Lennox Lewis, for example? McKenzie posed. He wouldn't get near him. Lennox Lewis would batter him into next Tuesday. These guys are genuine heavyweights, big heavyweights. The words hung in the air, stirring a sense of unease for those who had placed Usyk among the greatest of all time. Was McKenzie right? Was it premature to elevate Usyk to that level? After all, what did it really mean to be an all-time great in boxing? Was it simply about accumulating belts and defeating the best of your era, or did it require something more: a certain resilience, a certain toughness, a certain ability to conquer not just opponents but entire generations? McKenzie didn't stop there. He emphasized that while Usyk's achievements in the modern era were undeniable, they lacked the context of the previous era's rivalries. The boxing world of Ali and Foreman, Tyson and Holyfield, these were different times, where competition was fierce, and the rivalries burned with a fiery intensity. Usyk, in McKenzie's eyes, had missed out on that. Despite his success, McKenzie argued that he couldn't claim the same status as those titans. Yet, despite McKenzie's critique, Usyk's accomplishments remained. The Ukrainian's rise to the top of the heavyweight division had been nothing short of meteoric. He had proven the doubters wrong at every turn, dismissing concerns about his size and power. After all, when Usyk first made the move up to heavyweight, many questioned whether his cruiserweight frame would be enough to withstand the brutal punches of the bigger men in the division. But Usyk silenced those critics with each win, each dominant performance, culminating in his victories over the likes of Joshua and Fury. To the fans, to the fighters, and to the experts, Usyk had proven he was the best at least of his time. But McKenzie's words would linger, reminding everyone that greatness in boxing is more than just about winning titles and defending them. It's about legacy, about facing off against the fiercest rivals and coming out victorious time and again. And as much as Usyk had done, McKenzie's assertion that he wasn't yet an all-time great would resonate, prompting deeper questions about the true measure of a fighter's place in history. As Usyk now stands at the crossroads of his career, still undefeated and still holding the titles that many believed he would never win, the question remains, what's next for him? At 37 years old, Usyk is no spring chicken, and the end of his career may be closer than he or his fans would like to admit. Retirement looms on the horizon, especially after such a monumental run. But before that, there are whispers of one last challenger rematch with Daniel Dubois, the British heavyweight who has thrown his hat into the ring, calling for another shot at Usyk after his own impressive victory over Fury. Despite the speculation, Usyk has been tight-lipped about his future. His focus, for now, remains on savoring his legacy and preserving that undefeated record that has come to define him. Whether he will take on Dubois or walk away from the sport remains to be seen. One thing is certain, however, Usyk's place in boxing history, whether as a modern great or an all-time legend, will be discussed for years to come. His journey, his triumphs, and his battles will continue to spark debate among those who love the sport. But one thing is clear, for now, Oleksandr Usyk remains the king of the heavyweight division, undefeated, unbowed, and ready to take on whatever challenges may lie ahead. As Oleksandr Usyk reflects on his journey, the weight of his accomplishments, and the path that led him to the very top of the heavyweight division is undeniable. Yet, despite all he has achieved, the questions about his place in boxing history continue to hang in the air, like a cloud that won't dissipate. The debate, now more than ever, rages on. Is Usyk truly an all-time great, or is he simply the best of a modern era that lacks the fierce rivalries of the past? In the eyes of some, Usyk's dominance is undeniable. He has done what few ever thought possible, stepping up from cruiserweight, conquering the division, and then making his mark in the heavyweight ranks, where giants like Fury, Joshua, and Wilder reign. He has become the first undisputed heavyweight champion since Lennox Lewis, and in doing so, he has etched his name into the history books. But despite these feats, the question remains, can one man's reign, however impressive, stand up to the test of time and legacy that the likes of Ali, Tyson, and Lewis have set before him? For all his brilliance, Usyk's victory over Fury in December 2024 may not be the final chapter in this story. In the world of boxing, the story is never truly over until the fighter steps away from the ring for good. And for Usyk, who has been linked with a potential rematch against Daniel Dubois, it seems that his saga is far from reaching its conclusion. While Usyk enjoys the spoils of victory, he is also keenly aware that his legacy is far from sealed. What remains is the looming question of how he will be remembered in the annals of boxing history. His upcoming match with Dubois could very well be the catalyst for the final push that solidifies Usyk's place in the pantheon of boxing greats, or it could be the moment that sets off an entirely new chapter in his career. Whatever the outcome, there is one thing that can be said for certain: Usyk has already earned a place as a defining figure of his generation. His skill, his intelligence in the ring, and his ability to overcome all odds have marked him as one of the greatest to ever lace up the gloves in the modern era. But the doubts raised by figures like Duke McKenzie are not easily dismissed. The comparison to the titans of the past cannot be ignored. McKenzie's argument that Usyk lacks the kind of competition that defined the golden age of boxing holds weight. The sport has changed, and with it, the landscape of competition. Where once fighters like Ali, Frazier, and Foreman were locked in a fierce battle for supremacy, Usyk's era has seen less of that same level of rivalry. Fury, while undeniably talented, does not have the same resume of legendary opposition that the heavyweights of the past had to contend with. And while Anthony Joshua was once a dominant force, his stumbles against Usyk have somewhat clouded his legacy. In the world of boxing, the challenge for greatness is not just about who you beat, but how you beat them. The legends of the past were tested, not just by their skill, but by the warriors they faced in the ring. Mike Tyson's reign was punctuated by epic showdowns with fighters like Evander Holyfield and Lennox Lewis, battles that would go down in history as defining moments in the sport. Usyk, for all his brilliance, has not had that same level of historic rivalry. And as McKenzie pointed out, there is a distinct difference between a modern great and an all-time great. Still, Usyk is not without his defenders. His victories over Joshua and Fury cannot be overlooked, and his accomplishments in the cruiserweight division speak volumes about his ability to adapt, conquer, and dominate in multiple weight classes. The fact that he has done so while remaining undefeated speaks to his incredible skill and resilience. Usyk may not have faced the same level of competition that fighters like Ali or Tyson did in their prime, but he has still proven himself against the best of today's fighters. For many, that is enough to consider him a modern legend in his own right. As Usyk prepares for what may be the next chapter in his career, the future remains uncertain. At 37, he is at an age where most fighters are either winding down or stepping away from the sport entirely. But Usyk has always been a fighter who defies expectations. His move from cruiserweight to heavyweight was met with skepticism, and yet, here he stands, having conquered the most prestigious division in the sport. His future may be uncertain, but his legacy is already solidified in the eyes of many. But the question of greatness lingers, and it may continue to be a point of contention for years to come. Usyk's legacy will not be defined by one victory or one rivalry. It will be shaped by the totality of his career, the challenges he faced, the opponents he conquered, and the battles he fought. And as he looks to the future, one thing is certain: he will continue to write his own story, one fight at a time. And so, as the years go by and the debates continue to swirl, the boxing world will watch closely. Will Usyk continue to dominate and cement his place in history, or will the doubts of those like McKenzie hold weight? Only time will tell. But for now, Oleksandr Usyk stands as the undisputed heavyweight champion, undefeated, and poised to take on whatever challenges the future may hold. The story of his career is far from over, and in the world of boxing, the next great fight could be just around the corner. As the world of boxing watches with bated breath, Oleksandr Usyk stands on the precipice of history, his name already carved into the annals of the sport. Yet, the uncertainty of his legacy looms large. His journey, though monumental, is far from being fully written. Every punch, every move, every decision made within the ropes could either fortify his place among the greatest of all time or leave his name relegated to the modern greats. And this, perhaps more than anything else, is what makes Usyk's story so captivating: a tale of triumph and doubt, of victories that are celebrated yet contested, of a fighter who stands as both a champion and a question mark in the sport's evolving narrative. As Usyk looks ahead, the prospect of more battles, be it against the likes of Daniel Dubois or other contenders, remains a tantalizing possibility. A rematch with Dubois, who had aggressively called Usyk out after defeating Fury, would not just be another fight. It would be another chapter in the saga of Usyk's career, a potential defining moment that could answer lingering questions about his future and his place in the history of the sport. The prospect of such a clash is enough to make fans salivate, to wonder if Usyk's ring intelligence, honed over years of refining his craft, will be enough to overcome the raw power of a rising heavyweight star like Du Bois. For Usyk, the decision to take on this challenge, if it comes, could solidify his dominance in the sport. But there is also a different possibility, the chance that a rematch with a younger, hungrier opponent could test the limits of Usyk's abilities, pushing him into unknown territory. At 37, there's no denying that Usyk is entering the later stages of his career. But like many champions before him, he may find that it is precisely in these final years that his legacy is truly forged. Despite his age, Usyk remains fiercely competitive, driven by the same hunger and determination that has propelled him to the top. His undefeated record is not just a number, it's a statement. It speaks to his ability to adjust, to evolve, to learn from every victory and every setback. This is not the story of a fighter who is content with merely being a champion. This is the story of a man who is constantly seeking to prove himself, not just to his opponents, but to history itself. As the rematch with Du Bois remains on the horizon, Usyk will no doubt take time to reflect on his journey thus far. He has been through the crucible, battling not only in the ring but against the skepticism that once questioned his move from cruiserweight to heavyweight. In doing so, he has shown the world that his skills and his will are not defined by weight class. His performances against fighters like Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury have proven that Usyk belongs among the elite of the sport. But even as he silenced critics and conquered the modern era, the echoes of McKenzie's critique remain. Usyk is not just fighting opponents in the ring, he's fighting to secure his place in history, to answer the question that continues to haunt him: can he be considered an all-time great? The conversation surrounding Usyk's legacy is a complex one. Boxing, more than any other sport, is deeply entrenched in history, and the ghosts of past champions are always present, watching, judging. The greats of previous eras, Ali, Foreman, Frazier, and Tyson, are not just figures in history, they are the measuring sticks by which all future champions are judged. For many, Usyk has done everything expected of him. He has defeated the best of his generation, become the undisputed champion, and proven that his size and style are more than capable of standing toe-to-toe with the giants of the heavyweight division. But the true test for Usyk lies in his ability to transcend his era. Can he be the fighter who, when the dust settles, is remembered as not just a modern great, but a fighter whose name is spoken in the same breath as the legends of the past? In many ways, Usyk's career has been about proving people wrong. The doubts about his ability to compete with the bigger men of the heavyweight division have been silenced with every win. But like McKenzie's blunt assessment, the doubts about his place in history may not be so easily dismissed. It is not enough to simply beat the best of your time. You must also be able to stand tall when compared to the giants who have come before you, and this is where Usyk's challenge lies. As Usyk moves forward, there will be no shortage of challenges to come. The world of heavyweight boxing is constantly shifting, with new contenders emerging and old rivalries reigniting. The question of whether Usyk will remain on top or be unseated by one of the younger challengers, whether that be Du Bois or another rising star, remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, Usyk's story is not over. His next fight could very well determine the future of his legacy, either solidifying his place as one of the greatest to ever do it, or leaving a chapter in his career yet to be fully written. And so, with his undefeated record intact and his name already etched in the history books, Usyk finds himself standing at a crossroads. The road ahead may be uncertain, but one thing is clear: his journey is far from over. With each new fight, each new challenge, he will continue to write his story, and with it, the boxing world will watch, waiting to see how it ends. Will Usyk be remembered as the ultimate champion of his time, or will the legends of the past continue to cast their long shadows over him? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: Oleksandr Usyk's place in the ring, and in boxing history, will be debated for years to come. As the curtain falls on another chapter of Oleksandr Usyk's illustrious career, the world is left to wonder just how much further he can go. His journey, marked by extraordinary accomplishments and triumphs, has been nothing short of remarkable, Yet the questions that linger in the minds of boxing fans and pundits alike are what truly give his story an air of mystery. Is he truly the best of his time? Or is he just a fleeting figure in the ever-changing landscape of heavyweight boxing? The buzz around Usyk's name is undeniable. He has beaten some of the biggest names in the sport: Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, and others, cementing his place as the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. But the reality is that, despite his dominance, there remains a nagging uncertainty about whether he will ever truly be regarded as one of the all-time greats. The fact that even with 2 wins over Fury and an unblemished record, there are still whispers about his legacy, says a lot about the weight of history that hangs over him. For fighters like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and Lennox Lewis, their place in history was solidified through years of epic battles, legendary rivalries, and unparalleled skill. These men didn't just win titles, they defined eras. The same can be said for George Foreman, Joe Frazier, and Evander Holyfield, each of them leaving a mark that no fighter, no matter how skilled, could simply erase. Usyk, while undeniably talented, does not have that same kind of rivalry-laden history to fall back on. His most significant victories have come in an era where the competition, though fierce, is not quite as legendary as those who came before him. This, perhaps, is the greatest obstacle standing between Usyk and the title of all-time great. While his wins over Joshua and Fury have earned him the right to call himself the best in the modern era, the lack of historical context means that his legacy is still in flux. Fans and analysts will debate his place in history for years to come, and each new opponent Usyk faces will only serve to fuel that conversation. But Usyk's story is more than just about titles and legacies. It's about a fighter who has defied the odds at every turn, overcoming skepticism and doubt to rise to the very top of the sport. It's about a man who, despite his quiet demeanor and unassuming presence outside the ring, carries with him the heart of a lion and the mind of a master tactician. His rise from cruiserweight to heavyweight, his dominance in both weight classes, and his ability to adjust his style to meet the challenges of each new opponent all speak to his greatness. In many ways, Usyk's journey is a story of resilience. From the moment he stepped into the ring as an amateur, he has faced challenges that few can relate to. His ability to outthink and outmaneuver his opponents is what has set him apart from many of his peers. And while some may argue that he hasn't faced the same level of competition as the greats of the past, there's no denying that Usyk's skill set, his intelligence, and his versatility in the ring make him a unique talent. Even in the face of McKenzie's harsh criticism, Usyk remains undeterred. He has already achieved more than many could have ever imagined, and the prospect of adding another chapter to his career remains an enticing one. The possibility of a rematch with Dubois, a younger fighter with a fire in his belly and a chip on his shoulder, could be the perfect test for Usyk at this stage of his career. Whether it ends in victory or defeat, it will undoubtedly add another layer to Usyk's story, furthering the debate about where he stands in the pantheon of boxing legends. But as much as his future in the ring remains uncertain, one thing is clear: Usyk is not done. Whether it's fighting the next generation of heavyweights, or stepping away from the sport to enjoy the fruits of his labor, Usyk will leave a lasting impact on the boxing world. Should he retire in the coming years, his legacy will be defined by his incredible accomplishments, his undisputed titles in both cruiserweight and heavyweight divisions, his undefeated record, and his dominance over some of the best fighters of his generation. If he chooses to keep fighting, his place in boxing history will only continue to evolve, adding layers to a legacy that is already rich with achievement. Usyk's career will always be a subject of intense debate. To some, he is already a modern great; to others, he is merely the best of an era that lacks the same depth of competition as those who came before him. But no matter where you stand on the debate, one thing is undeniable: Oleksandr Usyk is a fighter who has captured the imagination of fans worldwide. His story is one of overcoming obstacles, proving his doubters wrong, and rising to the occasion time and time again. The boxing world waits to see what happens next in the story of Oleksandr Usyk. Will he retire as an undefeated champion, content with what he has accomplished? Or will he continue to push the boundaries, cementing his place in history as one of the greatest of all time? Only time will tell. But for now, Usyk's name will remain at the forefront of the sport, his career an ever-evolving tale that will be written with each fight he steps into. No matter the outcome, his place in the history of boxing is already secured. The question now is, where will he rank among the greatest of all time?